When I was a couple weeks short of my 70th birthday, I started thinking about my mother's mother, who lived to be 100, and her mother, who lived to be 102, and my father, who lived to be 90. I began to think that maybe our generation could be the first to routinely live to be 100. When I talked about this at family dinner one night, my granddaughter, who was 5, said,
"What are you going to do for the next 30 years, Grandpa?"
Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Price.
And I'm Gregg Kaloust. And we are Oldish. And this is our podcast, Oldish.
If you're oldish or know someone who is, please join us every week for conversations amongst ourselves
And our special guests
about what it means to be oldish in the 21st century.
If you ever wonder whether you're getting old, you're oldish. What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes?
So, Greg, before we started recording today, you were mentioning something about the history of the word holiday, which I found very interesting. Would you share that?
Yes, all the things that we celebrate as holidays were the origin of the word, and it's not hard to spot. Look at the word carefully. It says holy day. So the origin of the word holiday was holy day. And all of the holidays, Christmas, Easter, All Souls Day, were turned into Halloween. The origin was that they were days of religious celebration in many cases. And because here in the good old US of A, our religion has become dominated by commerce, the holidays have become ways to express how wonderful commerce is. So we're encouraged to buy things. Buy American flags to hang out out front. Buy hamburgers and hot dogs and good old American beer for your 4th of July barbecue. Buy this, buy that. So the holiday has become a buy-a-day. And that's always bothered me because it's a sad twist from the original, from the holiday. It's a sad twist to go from the celebration of the birth of Jesus, who said, quit buying stuff and go take care of people. So basically, that's the message of Jesus, right? Quit buying stuff and go take care of people. And to celebrate that by buying stuff and not taking care of people. So anyway.
Or the 4th of July, looking at what is the history of our country, what are things we're proud of, what are things we need to continue working on. Since I find it interesting that I've heard more this 4th of July than before of talking about the American democratic experiment, and that we're 250 years into this experiment. And so it'd be interesting to take some time, each of us, to think about where are we with this experiment? What do we need to do more of, less of, things we haven't even thought of yet that are taking care of each other.
Yeah. Yes. It's a good time for reflection, which is one of the points of holy days, was a time to pause and reflect. And how does this relate to the bigger picture? So.
And maybe that's something that we do more of as we get older, because we're reflecting on everything about our lives. And so taking time to reflect is like, okay, yeah, we can do that. We're oldish.
Yeah, that's right. We got time. Or we don't have time. So we better do it.
Right.
So we better hurry up and do it.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Greg, and I'm oldish.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm oldish. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Oldish, Conversations on Aging in the 21st Century. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Janet. How are you today?
I'm doing great. And it's great for us to meet today, as we've just, as a country, had 2 major holidays since you and I last had a conversation. Both the national holiday of Juneteenth, and then this past weekend, our country's 250th birthday on July 4th.
Yes. And also, something else that's not a holiday yet, but our men's soccer team has advanced in the World Cup. So that's something.
It is something. It's been so exciting to have the World Cup uh, period. And then to have the World Cup in and around Boston for some of it.
Yeah.
My partner and I were able to go down into Boston a couple weeks ago when the World Cup was starting, and it was Scotland versus something. I'm embarrassed I can't say who it was, but there were over 10,000 fans from Scotland that had infiltrated Boston, and it was so much fun. It was so much energy and kilts everywhere and laughing and drinking and kicking soccer balls and singing. It was really fun.
Well, that does sound fun. That does sound fun. And interestingly enough, there's a thread that ties the two holidays we want to talk about, July 4th and Juneteenth, and the World Cup, which I think is worth pointing out. So let's start with that one because it's in my head. And as you know, things that start out in my head don't often stay there long enough to manifest for other people. Which
Welcome to being oldish.
I know, and that's the kindest way I could put it.
Me too, since I also have that experience quite often.
Yes. So there's a thing that happened in the World Cup last week, which is that one of the U.S. players got a red card, which for those people who don't fully understand soccer, which includes me, a red card is given out for an extreme violation penalty with an assumption that it was done on purpose and maliciously. And what the red card means is that player is immediately removed from the game. The team has to play the rest of the game shorthanded, and that person is not allowed to play in the next game. Okay? So the violator is not allowed to play in the next game. Well, the person who was flagged for this red card, and it was very controversial, they showed the replay over and over again of he came down on an opposing player's ankle, causing the opposing player's ankle to buckle, and for the opposing player to do what, for some reason, these soccer football guys do every time a breeze blows by. They fall down and clutch their shins and roll around on the ground like they're in complete death throes. And I'm sure it's to draw the attention of referees. So anyway, this player who had already scored 2 goals for the U.S., who is in a situation where he has multiple citizenships. He was born in the U.S. This is the link that I want to talk about. He was born in the U.S. His parents were from Africa, but they lived in England. They were in the U.S. on a holiday. So he had a choice of being able to play for 3 different teams because he's a citizen of all 3 places. So he has multiple citizenship, and he was born in the U.S., so his U.S. citizenship was based on birthright citizenship that gave him his U.S. citizenship, right? His parents were here on holiday. As it happens, they didn't come here to have their baby. He wasn't an anchor baby. They came here on holiday. They lived in England happily. They're professionals, not birth tourists, which isn't a thing, but we've heard about it. So anyway, his mother was pregnant. She was 7 months pregnant. This is how I heard the story anyway. And when she went to get on the plane to fly back to England, they wouldn't let her on the plane because she looked too pregnant. So this baby was born here, and because of that, is a U.S. citizen. Yeah? Okay? So that's the start of the interesting thing. Also last week, the Supreme Court upheld the 14th Amendment that includes birthright citizenship over the major objections of the Trump administration.
Yes.
which were so extreme that for the first time ever, the President of the United States went to the Supreme Court during oral arguments in the case. That
Yes.
never happened before, right? So
Yes.
vehement, I'm not going to say violent, but vehement opposition to birthright citizenship. We have to get rid of this birthright citizenship. We've been hearing it for months. It was part of the campaign. We got to get rid of birthright citizenship. So here's where it gets an interesting twist. This guy is on the American team because of birthright citizenship. He also was the leading goal scorer on the American team, and he was not going to be allowed to play tonight against Belgium until the President of the United States called the president of FIFA, the organization that runs the World Cup, and says, that's a bogus rule you got there. You got to let my guy play.
Wow. It's so confusing.
It's so confusing. So Trump called, I forget the guy's name. So Trump called this guy. This is the guy that gave Trump the FIFA Peace Prize. I don't know if you remember last year when Trump was so
Yes, I
upset
do.
about not getting the Nobel Prize. So this FIFA guy showed up and gave him this completely made up award, the FIFA Peace Prize.
Yes.
So anyway, this guy who's vehemently opposed to birthright citizenship, almost entirely because he's a racist, when it looks like the U.S. might not be able to win because the best player is a black guy with birthright citizenship, calls up FIFA and makes them change the rule so that this guy can play. Holy crap.
So all interests and focus are subset to Trump wanting our country to look good. So all his racism and, all of that are underneath his desire to be number one as a country for himself.
For himself.
But what a great story. Yeah. I mean, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
And it just made me think about when we look at these holidays, Juneteenth being relatively new on the scene as a national holiday, and then 4th of July being one of the oldest ones, and the World Cup, however long that's been, I don't know. But just how much has changed for us as oldish people. We have all these years to look back at. So while you were talking, I was thinking the birthright citizenship issue clearly was not an issue forever. And this is such a great and awesome example of that. Like that birthright citizenship was made to happen. That woman didn't have a choice. And we've come from there to this point where the president would so vehemently oppose birthright citizenship that he would show up at the Supreme Court hearings.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's
crazy.
So the fourth, this guy, I'm going to try to pronounce this guy's name just so that you will have heard it and our listeners can follow along tonight when they play. His name is Folarin Balogun. And so that's not an American name. Come on. He's not named Bob or Jim or something. So anyway, it's so bizarre that it took that particular little twist. One other thing I want to say about the 4th of July is, in addition to just in the nick of time, the Supreme Court stood up to protect that, at least that part of the Constitution, which I think is pretty good. The 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, that celebration, which had been being planned for 10 years by a bipartisan commission set up by President Obama and Congress 10 years ago, was completely hijacked by Trump's administration when they changed it from America 250 to Freedom 250. And they started siphoning off money, and it was an abject failure, except for the people got their money, right? The money wasn't dependent on people showing up and buying hot dogs. the money was dependent on corporate donors. So the corporate donors got what they wanted, and the open pockets got stuffed, and so did we, which I think is a clever way to have said that.
Yes, it was. So I wonder if you ever feel this way, Greg, and any of our listeners, that I find as I'm aging that having this relatively long view of history, of experiences, of holidays, that it can feel discouraging because, well, even 10 years ago that we had Obama and, these things were happening, setting up a bipartisan committee so we could really, really celebrate America's 250th birthday in the best way possible. But even longer, just looking back over the history of, when you think of birthright citizenship, that our country was founded on birthright citizenship. But then also thinking about, and it causes me, holidays sometimes are opportunities, I think, to stop and think about, oh, it's 4th of July. I remember last year, 4th of July. I remember when I was a child at 4th of July. I remember running around with sparklers and fireworks. But we also have to remember, as Juneteenth can help us, remind us, I hope, of that there were different experiences over these past 250 years, depending on the color of your skin and maybe what country you did come from.
Yeah, so having a long view is handy. Some days I wish it were longer. Some days I wish it weren't quite so long. I can't remember my first 4th of July parade because I would have been a baby, but I'm sure that it included either when I was almost 1 or when I was almost 2. My father was home from the Korean War, and I'm sure we went to the parade and he had his uniform on, and somewhere in the thousands of pictures that are in this house, there may well be a picture of me and my sister and my mother with my father who was in uniform. And then, because the house that I'm in now, where I grew up, is just down the street from the cemetery, the 4th of July parade always went right past our house. So the 4th of July parade was a big deal. And then we'd have fireworks and a family gathering in the backyard. And 4th of July was an actual patriotic holiday when people were all about, America's a good place. It's not perfect, but it's a good place. And we could carry on, and we're all in this together. And that's how I remember the 4th of July when I was a kid. We're all in this together. And it ain't like that anymore. One of the things that ties the 4th of July together with Juneteenth was the shocking photograph. I don't know whether you saw it, but there was a shocking photograph taken in the DC subway on a train car in the DC subway, and there was a young black woman looking very anxious on the car, and the only other people visible on the car were people from a white supremacist group called the Patriot Front. And they were armed and wearing masks. Yes, and she was sitting alone on the car. I think if somebody tried to stage that, they wouldn't have been able to. But that says a lot about Juneteenth.
And the different experiences that people have had over these 250 years in our country's history, from, if you're white, if you're at some point, white middle class, then your experience was of the holidays and also of the country in general, one of a celebration, a birthday of our country, being in it all together. But if you weren't part of that group, so even now, I didn't see that picture. It's just so horrible, or that photo. But even now, that's, as you said, such a reminder of what it's been like for people of color all this time.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are, depending on what moment you're in. So there's such a complexity to people's experiences. And I think for me, I know for me, these holidays at this point in my life remind me of that I didn't think we would be here at this moment. I didn't think that we would have either not made any enough progress or gone backwards in some ways in some of the things. I mean, even having, well, in this area anyway, having armed white supremacists with hoods riding on the public subway. I mean, is that us going backwards? Or, I haven't heard of that happening in recent times around Boston.
Well, I think the origin of Make America Great Again is let's go back to when the KKK could ride around.
Yeah.
And it's very, very
Yeah.
similar, very similar. And it's shocking, but the good news is it's not regular Americans who feel that way. I think it's a very small subset of Americans who feel that way, and the subset is getting smaller all the time, I think, as people who are on board with MAGA for reasons other than white supremacy, whatever it might be, taxes or whatever, are starting to say, wait a second, I don't get my tax relief without having this attached to it. I'd almost rather pay taxes or, whatever the thing is, because I don't want to be associated with that. And I think that was the message of the complete failure of anybody to show up at the celebrations in that national, I forget, the state fair thing that was set up on the National Mall. Nobody showed up for that. I mean, almost literally,
Yes.
nobody.
Yes.
I saw a meme the other day that one of the days was canceled because of extreme heat, and the people were turned away. And in the meme, it said, and all three people were terribly disappointed.
Yes, that was very encouraging to me. It's very encouraging to me, those signs of hopefully a changing tide. But again, I don't know if you experience this as an oldish person, but as I age, not only do I feel that way, but I notice that some people, as they're aging, and maybe we're on a roll in their successes in their work and professionally and whatever, and that maybe some of that crumbles in their old age for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Like starting a business and it's going really well, and then it for technology, for example, then all of a sudden that technology is old and useless, and so something you spent your life building and feeling really good about suddenly is not relevant anymore. And I don't think we assume or prepare for that possibility. It's almost like that when we're younger and if we are building and growing, we just assume that will continue, that will be our legacy, and then if that doesn't happen, we're kind of lost.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see that happening to people around me a little bit, it's kind of shocking. It's kind of like, oh yeah, nothing is set in stone. Everything changes, even our standing, even our accomplishments. And what we're left with is our most basic self, which is our internal self and our ability to be here now. And so it's just, I'm finding all of this fascinating as I'm aging.
Yes. Yeah. And that's all, as that falls away, the finding purpose in externals falls away, at least in my experience and in other oldish people that I talk to, partially because you can't. I mean, you're forced to retire for one reason or another, or your family changes or something. So the sense of self that's built in externals has to fall away. And some people don't come up with a new one, but the new one was there all the time. And it's the purpose of life is other people. I think it was Oscar Wilde, that said hell is other people. but the purpose of life is other people. And and when you get to be oldish, we can see that a little bit, I think, that it doesn't matter how fancy my car is or how big my house is or where I sent my kids to college or how many boats do I have or any of that. But, look at how many people do I love and how many people love me. That's a place to find purpose, I think. And there's not any reason at all to not love everybody.
Yep. That's a profound thought. And I agree.
Yeah.
I say, hear, hear.
Yes. So on that profound thought, because we better get out of here before I contradict it, it's been nice as always having a chat with you about holidays as well as other things. And I'm glad to see you again. And I know you're going off on a trip, and I look forward to seeing you when you get back.
And same with you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes. All right. Well, happy whatever it is. And goodbye, Janet.
Bye, Greg.
That's it for now. Thanks for listening. If you're still listening, you've noticed that this was published quite a while after the 2026 Juneteenth and 4th of July. I apologize, but better late than never. Next up is a conversation about traveling while oldish that is mostly about Ireland. Please join us, and don't forget to love everyone. You can leave comments or requests for topics or guests on this or other episodes at www.oldish.me. There's a link there too if you've wondered how you can help support our podcast. If you like what you heard today, please tell a friend and rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.